if we look at, let's say, Christian literature, specifically, let's say, the mystics, the Christian mystics, such as Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, they would have used a term, ecstasy, for a religious experience that they would define in terms of bliss and joy. So I personally believe that if we're going to attempt to render samadhi and jhana within the English language properly, then we really should be translating it as ecstasy, those terms as ecstasy. Now, there's a lot of resistance in a Buddhist context to translating these terms as ecstasy, so we've, let's say, come to some kind of middle ground when we use the term absorption. Absorption needn't have that ecstatic terminology, but it does suggest to me, and I think to you as well, the audience, that absorption suggests an altered state of consciousness, which is what I believe jhana and samadhi are about. And that is that we practice meditation and other aspects of the contemplative life with the purpose of producing an altered state of consciousness. And that altered state of consciousness is defined in ecstatic terms such as bliss and joy. Okay, so that suggests then the first jhana is a wildly ecstatic state, right? Well, perhaps not. In every religious system, we find that there are mystics. Every religion has its mystics. As I said, Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and many other Christian mystics define their religious experience in ecstatic terms. And they almost always use the terms bliss, joy, and ecstasy for those experiences. If we look at Islam, Islam has their mystics as well. And they generally fall into the category of Sufis. And the most notable Sufis are in this category are Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, and Kabir. And both of them define their religious experience in ecstatic terms, such as bliss, joy, and ecstasy. If we look at Hinduism, then Hinduism has a long pantheon of mystics, and almost every one of them define their experience in bliss, joy, and ecstasy. And let's say Patanjali would probably be the best example of that. Patanjali described the religious experience in 4 chapters, which is known as the Yoga Sutras. And remarkably, he uses very similar terminology as the Buddha, which suggests that Patanjali and the Buddha probably lived in similar times. Although Patanjali expressed himself in Sanskrit, and the Buddha expressed himself in the native language of his people, which was Magadhi, which is what we know of as Pali. Nonetheless, the Buddha used a lot of Sanskrit terms, such as Buddha is a Sanskrit term, Samadhi is a Sanskrit term, but Jhana is not. Jhana is a Pali term. And the Buddha described basically 9 stages of absorption, 4 of which he called jhana, the remaining 5 he called ayatana, and the overall, and they were all basically sub-experiences, or they existed under the subcategory of samadhi. All 9 experiences were samadhi. So his definition of Samma-samadhi meant that there were actually 9 experiences that fell into the category of samadhi or Samma-samadhi. Thank you.